super pleased to have Yohei Nakajima from Untapped VC on the show. He's one of the best builder VCs that I know and has a fascinating take on things. In this show, he's going to talk about his AI and VC presentation to his LPs, the LLM summit that he had planned and just happened, building in public, and his true North Star in building out the firm. As a reminder, if you like this content and want to see other VC interviews, please hit the subscribe button below. Good morning. So today we've got Yohei Nakajima on the call, calling in from where? Yohei?
Seattle.
Ooh, so it's afternoon for you right now.
Afternoon. And sunny, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's sunny over here in Hong Kong as well. This is my first podcast back in Hong Kong after spending time in Austin. So really, thank you for your time. I'm really excited to have you on the call. Lots of tough questions and maybe some easy questions as well. Tell me, 15-second intro about your background, including from Techstars.
Yes. So I've been working with startups my whole career. Started on the community side with co-working spaces, meetups. Then I worked with Techstars, where we overlapped. I was on the Disney accelerator team before I moved to a more central role as a director of pipeline. And then I jumped over to Scrum Ventures, a Bay Area VC firm with close ties to Japan, before starting Untapped.
And then how long have you been at Untapped, and how long have you started? And tell me a bit more about Untapped as well.
Yeah, so we started Untapped in really ideating on in 2019, but started 2020. We are a pre-seed venture firm based in the US, investing primarily in the US. One thing that makes us unique is that we do a lot of building in public with the newest tools that we leverage internally. And we use that process as a way to both learn about the new tech and industries, but also as a way to meet founders. And it's been a unique process that's allowed us to kind of meet founders in a unique way.
And is that what you think makes Untapped different? I think from a lot of VCs, is it that kind of building in public thesis?
Yeah, I think that's become kind of the core component of our story. Though initially when we started, and this is still very true, we focus on unexpected founders. We think that looking at the VC market, too many VCs are looking at the same startups, largely due to a culture of referrals and allocation chasing. And we know that there's great founders who don't have a connection to VCs, and we want to be the best VCs at finding those founders. So when we launched, from the day one, we were building our custom-built CRM. I used to run outbound across Techstars, so I took a lot of my learnings there and built a custom CRM that's efficient for doing outbound. This process I did publicly, live tweeting as I was building things actually on no code, and that was kind of what started kind of that process of us as a firm, and that's continued.
I remember actually I used to get a lot of emails from you. I didn't get I'm sure investors got email. I got some emails, internal emails about I think various just demo days all across the ecosystem. So that was definitely you.
Yes, you definitely did get emails from me when you were at Techstars.
So building in public, let's talk a little bit about that. So that's a theme of the firm, and I think that's increasingly being kind of visible as a theme. And I think a lot of people do, kind of a lot of firms or a lot of GPs do kind of say we build in public or we talk in public. But I think you guys take it a little bit further. So I'm going to take us back during 2 years ago when the NFT craze was happening. You started kind of going down that rabbit hole and trying to explore what NFTs were. Tell me about what did you do in response to that?
Yeah, going back even further, I'd been following, tracking crypto, DeFi. I studied finance. I followed it, but it didn't quite click for me. And then I remember early 2021 when NFTs were picking up. I kind of saw what was happening, given my background with, I think, Disney, and also I've worked with Nintendo through Scrum. I think the kind of media entertainment piece clicked a little bit more. So I was like, this is something I want to play with. I actually initially did a super small collection on my own just to go through the process, but actually made a lot of mistakes in the minting and just immediately paused it. And then I did it on another project for about 6 months essentially and launched what became Pixelbeasts, which was a 10K PFP project. As a way to kind of learn about Web3 alongside other founders and VCs. And we did things like weekly events, integrations into games, and it was wild. I mean, it's still going on, but it's definitely not as active as it was at its peak.
So just for everyone's, we were just kind of catching up over Pixelbeast. I think the floor price is about $10 US. And I was mentioning that I need to buy a few because there is an online event on March 14th for PixelBeast NFT holders, right? So
Yes.
for everyone that's listening to this podcast, pick up a PixelBeast because there are nuggets of insights, I guess, must be on March 14th.
There will be. An annual event was always part of what I, you know, promised as part of Pixel Beasts. Last year we did the GM Summit. It was a wonderful summit on Web3. But Pixel Beast is just me right now, right? Large language models, GPT-3 is what's really hot, and I've been spending a lot of time there. And I've had demand for me sharing some of my learnings through the building. So I decided I would instead of the GM Summit, we will do the LLM Summit. So that's what we'll be doing on March 14th. And I will be talking about building on top of GPT-3 for basically 2.5 hours. And part of it will include, this is totally experimental, but a freestyle speed building, which means I will just take requests from the audience and build what they request live as fast as I can.
This is like what Charlie Puth did, right? It's one of those like, composing on the spot. Ben Folds 5, I think it's.
Exactly.
Are you that good? Are you that good, Yohei? Are you that good?
Type in the features I'm fast. I'm really fast at building, so I thought it would be a fun and entertaining way to teach people to build.
Okay. For that entertainment value alone, I think I will. Yeah, I will definitely attend that summit. I will be in Bangkok, but that sounds interesting. Now, talking about ChatGPT and what you've been building, so I've been noticing your tweets on March 6th or March 5th. I think you were doing, or March 5th, you were doing some with text and camera. You were also doing something very similar to Siri with GPT-3.
Yes, those are probably my two most recent projects from the last few days.
Yep. And then March 6th, you say so many ideas, it's not enough time. What other ideas are you considering? What other ideas?
Oh man, there's just so many ideas on things. And a lot of stuff I don't like sharing before I build it because one, it takes the fun out of building if you tell people the idea and you get credit for it. So I usually don't talk about ideas before I build it. But I will share one because I tried to take a stab at it last night. It didn't really work. And I also don't need to spend time building it. So one idea I had, it's a project I called Tim internally for myself. And it's the idea of a ChatGPT style bot that has perfect memory of every conversation it has with everybody and only memory from conversations. So it can only answer stuff. It can only answer stuff that people have told the chatbot, but it remembers every conversation of everybody. So if one person tells it something and someone else asks it, it would be able to repeat that. And so that was totally interesting approach to basically you can go on the chatbot and teach it stuff, and it will recall. You just store all the conversations in Pinecone, and then so if you ask it a question, it recalls past conversations, and it can only answer if it's been in a previous conversation. And the project is called TIM because it stands for Temporarily Innocent Machine, meaning when you launch it, it knows nothing bad, but I know that people will feed it bad information.
Got it. And then actually, I was going to ask project names. How do you usually name them? Obviously you don't do the mountains. You don't do animals. You do acronyms.
It's whatever I call it for myself. I mean, it's whatever the first name that pops to mind. I was building a pitch deck builder. I called it Autodeck because it was the first name that popped to mind.
Tim is much better. Autodeck.
Tim is a fun one. The more philosophical, experimental projects tend to have more interesting names because they're purely hypothetical and interesting, and it's more of an art project versus more practical ones tend to have straightforward names, so it's easy to remember.
Now I'm going to go into actually your presentation on February 23rd, Future of AI and VC for LPs.
Yes.
And I had a couple of, I liked some of the things that you were showing. But before I kind of state that, what were some of the favorite? So I'll say this: the mini Yohei, the quick memos, the interaction summaries. I think those are good, and I liked how you call it. It's intelligence augmentation. It's not meant to replace the VC, but it's supposed to augment what we're doing anyway. So can you talk a little bit about more of that presentation, and also what you mean?
I won't repeat the whole presentation, but at the high level, right? AI has been around VC, but it's mostly been around sourcing and diligence, right? Sourcing meaning identifying startup, diligence meaning scoring startups is where most of the attention has been. But with ChatGPT, right, having the text interface, it can now apply to all of all aspects, everything from extracting data from pitch decks and updating our CRM to drafting up investment memos. Our approach, we talk about what you talked about, augmented intelligence, is that that term refers to the idea that an output from an AI plus human will be better than an output of an AI alone or a human alone. And I think the most clear example of that, we built, the first project I did was a mini Yohei VC expert for our portfolio founders. It was basically a wrapped GPT-3, right? It was a while back. At that time, it was pretty exciting for me. It's pretty easy to build now, but it would answer questions related to VCs or startups that portfolio founders can ask. The way I designed it, when they ask a question, they immediately get an email response from the AI where I'm CC'd. And so I would see the question, the AI's answer, and then I would respond. Sometimes I would say this is correct. Sometimes I would, add a link that add other resources that I think are relevant, or maybe even say, they said this, but I actually think this, and maybe even say the opposite of what the AI said. And so the way I saw Mini Yohei was actually a combination of the AI's response, which came immediately, faster than me, plus my response, which is more, thought out, but takes a little bit longer. So depending on the question, right, you kind of get both the benefits of the quick AI response plus the more thought out human response. And that's the approach we've been taking in terms of, and again, in different ways, but kind of our philosophy around leveraging AI at our firm.
And then out of those, like 4 things kind of that I mentioned that I was personally a fan of, what do you think, which ones have shown the biggest, let's say not traction, but I guess appreciation and from the founder side, and or which one do you think has really made a big difference internally?
Internally, I'd say the investment memo drafting tool at this point has had the biggest impact. For people not familiar, right? I can feed it a URL, a description, or a deck, and it will give me, it will kind of analyze it, give me customers, pain points, alternate solutions, business model, various risks, considerations, challenges, similar startups, similar unicorns, relevant acquisitions, product on sentiment analysis, and built with tech stack. And it's built so that we can keep adding kind of analysis to it. What's been amazing is that all of this stuff is, the analysis is pretty basic to some extent, right? It's not as going to be as well thought out as, me sitting down and thinking specifically through the problem. But what I do like is that for every startup we look at, we start with a base set of questions, and we start by asking those questions. And it kind of creates a standardization across the way we diligence. 2, a lot of the questions can be answered by AI, at least at the basic level, which the AI does answer. And beyond that, it pings different APIs, which is the equivalent of us going to a website and analyzing it. For example, if it's on Product Hunt, it will look at the comments and do a sentiment analysis of the comments, which is what I used to do. But when I did it, I usually did it later in my funnel, meaning, I've already shown some level of interest, so I'm finally starting to dig in. So before our investment memo, most of my diligence, most of my learning happened later in our funnel, because that's when we actually started doing research. But now the research starts at the very top of our funnel with no extra work. So I'm getting to go deep in understanding understanding the product on sentiment, looking at their tech stack, understanding similar unicorns for more startups than I used to, right?
Got it. So that's definitely been obviously a time saver, but not only that, I think you were saying that
just on the other side. Yeah, not just on the other side. Just because we are an outbound firm, it's also a really nice tool that we can share with founders, which just increases kind of our connection to them. We already have something that's valuable to them that I can send them on the first outreach.
Oh, right. Got it. Noted. And then secret project demo. Can you talk about that? Or in this rule, you don't want to talk about what you're not building?
No, I guess I won't talk about what I haven't finished building yet. I'm going to stick to that. Because it's one of those psychological things where if I start talking about it and people are like, oh, that's exciting, I kind of feel good about it, and right. My motivation to build lowers.
Well, oftentimes in the crypto space, people say, drop some alpha, but I'm not gonna push if you don't insist on it.
I won't. Not on this one.
Maybe you'll drop it actually on March 14th. Actually,
we'll see.
Yeah, so we're gonna put a link to the presentation in the podcast. It's a fantastic deck. I think what you're doing is great, and that's something that actually we would love to leverage as well. Going back now to the human side, this is kind of what I call the VC therapy side. What is the challenge that you face as a firm recently or in the past? And tell me about that and what you've done to overcome it.
I mean, I think a constant challenge is prioritization and time management, right? There's constantly an infinite number of things I want to do for our firm, our portfolio companies, and more founders I want to talk to than I can. So prioritization is constantly a challenge. What helps is being, having someone to talk through those challenges with, I guess, to some extent, right? Jessica has been an incredible partner in building the firm with, um, and having, yeah, we have open discussions about, our challenges, not just day-to-day things. So it helps kind of understand what we prioritize as a firm. And I think that's definitely helpful. And I think also, with all the building, definitely get interest to, spin out things or try something else, or, even Web3, do a Web3 firm, whatnot. But it's been helpful to, I've kind of made the decision that I really just want to, our North Star, for work is just building out untapped capital. So everything I build, right? Sometimes I seem distracted building a whole bunch of different tools, but all of it is to serve the one goal of growing Untapped, supporting our founders and returning capital to LPs. And having that North Star is always helpful in terms of just like figuring out what to cut out and what to focus on.
I can see that. So the first one is, I guess, follow up to the first question is, do you have structured time where you and your partner kind of sit down and talk, or is it the fact that it's unstructured and you can always just kind of go and talk to her whenever you have something? And follow up to the second question is, I can see that there's a lot of shiny things that you can build and you can spin out, and there's kind of that brain. But to some degree, I guess that piece has made you reinforce and question yourself what's really important in all this, right? What am I really doing, right? I could be spinning out these things, and that's really exciting. But then I guess that type of kind of mentality forces you to kind of be even stronger, I guess.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. To answer your first question, we do have structured time, as in we meet on regular intervals. But our meetings generally start relatively unstructured. We have agendas, but we always start chatting about whatever's top of mind. Interesting. I'd say I'm much more of an agenda-driven meeting person, and Jessica's much more of a free-floating. Let's talk about whatever's top of mind that you're feeling. And I think the two of us working together allows us to make sure we have that unstructured time while also making sure we're getting through the stuff we need to.
And she is it also local? Because I do think kind of remote work lends itself to more kind of structured agenda setting, right? Versus I think sometimes in real life you do kind of wander off. There's opportunity, I guess, surface area for wandering. Have you noticed that as well?
100%. We are remote. And we managed to have that kind of casual chat. But you're right. I think it's harder to do. Usually when we meet, we have longer meetings. I think longer meetings help. I think when you do only 30-minute meetings, it really doesn't leave much room for casual chatter. But as long as you give enough time for the meetings, you have some leeway to just casually chat before and after.
Yep. Okay. So you build that in specifically. Last question: if you had to build Untapped again, how would you do things differently?
It's a good question. I honestly don't think I would do anything differently. Is the kind of fake answer. I mean, it's a philosophical thing. It's I don't regret anything I do. Every decision I made has led me to where I am, and I'm happy with where I am. So why would I change anything? I've watched enough watched enough movies to know that if you change something, other things change, and I don't those unknown consequences are scary to me.
It's like the butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Fair.
I mean, over the course of the last few years, I'd say one thing I was least prepared for was launching an NFT project. I'll tell you that was like I did not expect the amount of emotional, and physical time that would take to keep a Discord community happy.
Oh, I see. It's the Discord management.
Yes.
And you were doing it all alone.
Yeah. It was like the solo guy. So like, and especially when it was like the hot project timing wise, like in retrospect, I understand now that like people are going to come into your Discord and they're going to say mean things. Like every project had to deal with that. But without having like mentally prepared myself for it, that was a little bit rough.
Interesting. And then and then it's only like 0.5% listed, right? 50 out of 10,000.
Yeah, on OpenSea, yeah, just now 50.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's. I'm on a couple of Discords, and I do find that people can be quite mean.
It's also like right after the launch too, right? And that's and it's not something that lasts forever either, right? And afterwards, I met a lot of NFT founders, and everyone ran into the same thing, right? It's the post-launch 1 month was always the toughest for everybody.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for the answer, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.